I'll tell you a funny story, which I often see at best when the participants, middle school and high school students, sometimes discover these abilities. You see how sometimes even gravity backs and they rise from the floor. So this isn't Jesus Christ walking on water. So I'm not describing, although I respect that as well so much, but you see how their self-awareness of what's going on
Yeah. Wow.
when they own suddenly these capacity and
Fantastic.
gravity backs and they rise.
Wow. I'm getting
And
goosebumps
I
now. It's
cry
fantastic.
when I watch it
Wow.
because they become aware not how gifted they are, but what tremendous capacities
Yeah.
are there. And you watch it and you say, God, what's going on? They were given and they are aware of it and they use it.
Welcome to the Grow and Learn podcast, your go-to source for expertise and insights on a variety of topics: business growth, leadership, technology, personal and business finance, and more. We've curated a vast network of business experts ready to address your company's most pressing challenges. Reach out to us for more information or schedule a call at growandlearn.org to explore how we can support you. Welcome to Grow and Learn, Curious Minds. Today, I am speaking to the Executive Director of Best Robotics, Michael Steiner. We're going to be speaking about learning, what learning actually is, about the link to innovation, about how our minds work, the link between innovation, intuition, everything that is learning out there. We're going to be talking about Best Robotics, what it is. It's a competition for children and the innovative solutions they come up with, but we're going to hear more about it. And then we're going to talk about the future of learning, the future of our society. I'm welcoming with great pleasure Michael Steiner. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Zarina. You started with a wonderful introduction, not as a compliment, but you threw me back, in fact, into working with commanders in the military and commanders who already proved themselves in their field of expertise. And I'm not going to go too deep into it. So the military wanted to give them a surge in a certain aspect. They were already noted as going to be upgraded in their career. So the HR of the military already noted that they were going to be promoted. And so there's a need to boost them. Boost them in what aspect? They're already gifted in whatever specific career they are in. So they come to a specific training, which among other things is going to boost their ability to learn, which is exactly the subject of what we are speaking about. I went through this learning. I then became a trainer in this learning, specific base in the military, and then I became a leader of this training, in this commandership training. The training focused exactly in what you are setting the goal for our conversation. So now let's leave that and speak about the goal of our conversation. The difficulty we have, not in the conversation, the challenge we have is that there's nothing simple in learning. Learning is one of the most challenging cognitive abilities of humans. It's complicated. Most people know that. Sitting and trying to learn is complex. The other side of that coin is that it's one of the highest potentials we have. We can learn more than AI does now for us. So why is this important then, if this has such a potential? At the end of the conversation, you'll see that we will come to examples of some unbelievable things that humans can do if they tap into this cognitive, highest of the cognitive abilities of how learning works. Now, let's break it into pieces. What is it
Yes,
in the
exactly.
learning to
Before we
learn.
unpack it, Michael, is learning even the correct term for what we're going to describe, or is there something that could describe the process better than learning?
Again, brilliant point, brilliant finger into it. It really isn't the right way to look at it. It's made of three pieces. It's the intake, it's the memorization, and it's the recalling of the information. So what we call the learning, it's made of three different, completely different sections. One is when we bring the information in. We'll give an example in a second. The other one is the storage. And the third one is when we recall the information.
When we retrieve it.
When we retrieve it,
Mm-hmm.
these are completely different parts of what we call, in general terms, learning.
Mm-hmm.
Before I go deeper, I want you and our listeners and viewers to think of something we are all very familiar. Remember when we walk in New York or in Chicago or any big city, we sometimes see people who are gifted and have those three cups on a table typically, and under one of them there's a coin or a ring or a golden quarter or golden dollar, and they quickly move those cups in front of us, and that golden dollar keeps moving, and our eyes are trying to identify where is that quarter or dollar. The information, the intake, the learning is moving between these three, like our eyes are looking at the dollar. So when we think of learning, what we bring in keeps seamlessly moving. It isn't static. It's constantly active. There's nothing passive in learning.
Mm-hmm.
We need to close our eyes and think of learning as one of the most active thing in our existence, like that dollar or quarter that keeps moving. When we think on how to design a process where we learn, we need to think of these three cups of moving information.
I understand that learning and specifically this perceiving of information has many components because we have many senses and they're then processed in a different way. But if we have to simplify it, let's say we're reading from a book. What happens when we are perceiving simply by reading? What happens in our brains, in our minds? How is the information processed?
So another piece before I answer your question, and it's individualized. So some of us, if we stick to the example of the book, or if we listen to somebody talking, some of us, and I'm sure many of the listeners will say, I do that. Some of us will take a pen and will write on the book. Or as I do, I did that, I make a copy of the pages because I felt bad ruining the book for others. So I made a copy and I would write. Others, also me, I would read the text and I would imagine the author. I would see her or him writing the book. I would see the words rise. So the learning is an active, constant process of change. Learning will not happen unless a change in one of these three, remember the intake, memorizing it, and retrieving it. A change must constantly happen. You'll see in a classroom somebody drawing, somebody writing, somebody typing. That's similar to writing on the book, writing on the page. A change has to happen. If there's no change, constant, there's no learning.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to best, I'll give you deeper examples of the change. It's a condition to learning. No change, no learning. The change has to happen in all three sections, which we started with.
Mm-hmm.
It has to move through all these three departments of learning.
Yeah, I read specifically about this part in one of your articles on LinkedIn about learning. I can't recall exactly the name, but people can visit your profile and go through the articles. It's about learning. I believe it's called Learning Something Part 1.
Learning to learn.
You talk with your partners. You talk about how the learning process, exactly what you're describing, while people are making notes or copying whatever they're doing when they're reading, for example, whatever they're imagining needs to go through their personal information and needs to go through their existing links. And so by this process, change the existing neural links in their brain. So they're reliving it through their own perspective.
So you're going to a deeper level, and it's as if you're reading through my mind, and you're jumping few steps forward. You're no. You're in fact learning. You are in fact implementing one or two of the steps of how learning really occurs. You're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go, in fact, deeper into this magical process of the change, how learning really works. So one significant element which we own, humans, connected to the intake, that first part of the triangular, which is in the learning, which we started with, is our sensory system. So let's not define it yet. Let's go into an example. Enters a teacher and says, you know what, guys, I have this emergency at home. One of my family members got sick. So we have this challenge subject that I have to teach you, but I have to run home. One of my members got COVID, and so I have to take her either to the clinic, to the hospital, or get her medication, but I cannot stay. I've been called home. But on the other hand, I have to teach you that. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you, and I made copies of the curriculum. So I've divided between what I need to do at home and what you have to learn. I made 4 copies, and I'm asking you to divide into 4 groups. One of the groups will teach the others the subject based on the curriculum which is copied. The other one will produce a video the way they understand it. The third one will go to the next class, which has a laboratory, and they will test it because it's physics. And the fourth one will discuss whether it really is feasible, whether there are contradictions in the theory presented in the document. Why those different versions? The different versions is because the best way to improve the intake is to use what we call our sensory system. The most famous ones is the hearing, the visual, but there's few more in our sensory. We have the taste, we have others one, we have our balancing system, the body, we have few in our sensory system. If we want to secure that the intake takes full advantage of our abilities, we deploy as much of our sensory system, which means not just teaching in a way where our participants, our students, will sit and write. Sit and write is the mechanism of our body, our visual. It's not bad, it's already 2. But if we add more of these, the intake, the memorization, and the retrieval will be way more effective. So you
would
ask,
you say this is like an embodying of what they're learning, like
correct,
reliving it in a way.
Correct. So if we find a way to deploy the smell, the taste, the audio, if we figure out a creative way to deploy these, the ability to retrieve the information, to store it and most important, to keep moving it inside all the domains of the brain will be endless. There will be people who will listen to what we just said and say, this is crazy. How far do you want to go? This is like the question about truth. How deep do you want the information to stay in the brain? How useful do you want the information to stay? If it's complex, if you want to teach something which is so complex and yet to be useful, such as flying an F-18, the pilots need to use something which is excruciating complex. If you want to teach them, you don't teach them in a classroom, you teach them in a simulator. Think about the simulator. It vibrates, it goes up and down, it makes noises. All the sensations do enact. Why? Because then the pilot, as you are going to say.
I know I am making references to the Silva method and another method that I have developed based on a few mind reprogramming methods that all use what you're saying. And so this is a different business that I had been running alongside with GrowNLearn. But whenever I have taught groups of people to use their intuitive skills, the stories that we create using all the sensations and including enacting feelings in the process, I can tell you that I remember stories from a few years back to the very detail, because you do not forget something that you have relived and recorded in a group environment, especially in a meditative state. And what you're doing is very similar, because in this process, when people are reenacting this, whatever they're learning, they're also in the process of flow. So this is similar to a meditation, correct?
So when you teach former pilots, which I have done, when you teach former fighter pilots to do certain things which require them these capacities, not to fly the planes, because they've already done that, but they need to acquire skills they do not have, you bring them back to their planes. And then suddenly a surge in their cognitive ability rushes all the way up. Why does it rush all the way up? Because their memories, their cognitive ability is connected to these machines, to these devices.
It's a trigger. It's a trigger.
Absolutely. The brain recognizes. I was going to because it rushes back into my cognitive ability. It's like we feel with our family members, the pets. There's certain emotions that rushes to us when we are with them that nobody can explain or understand. But when we are with them, something unusual happens to us. It cannot be explained. It's not similar to children. It's not similar to other expressions and enactments that we have. They feel us and they connect to us and we to them in a completely different way. They know it, we know it, and when we are present with them, something different happens. It's the way the information is stored and retrieved, and the intake comes with them, with our pets. It's unique. In the same way that you want to create the learning. I get goosebumps because these are not things you can copy. You have to teach it this way, learn it this way. And that's how learning really works.
In this conversation, it seems that we are catching up on each other's steps. Like I was just about to ask you how information is stored. Where does learning happen? Does it happen in the brain? In which parts of the brain? Does it happen in something like a cloud? What do you know about it?
So the reason I'm smiling is because you constantly tap into, and this is being said with love and appreciation. So, you constantly tap into what is going to be said at the end. So why wait to the end? The one reason that we all need to know how learning works is because there is ability in us, which reminds us, the AI, there's ability in us, if we know how learning works and if we reflect on each of us and our ability to learn, that will elevate us and our ability to learn. We will then be able to do what you and I are doing during this conversation. We are obviously, although there's a distance, you are in Vienna and I'm in Pittsburgh, but we keep connecting through a Zoom, through a distance, into each other's brain and into each other's learning ability. How can this be possible if we are so far from each other? It is possible because the awareness to the learning ability, neuroscientists will explain it, enables us to do things that are unusual. A neuroscientist will explain it. A person like Jens Hartmann, who is my colleague to this article, you mentioned him earlier, there are such elevated abilities in our learning ability that the importance of understanding how learning works will push us to these levels.
Mm-hmm.
We will not sit and write comments on a book. We will do what you and I are doing. We will exchange nonverbal abilities. You will keep pushing to the end, and I will, because of it, change the order of the conversation. Why not? That's the elevated cognitive ability that humans have.
Mm-hmm.
It needs us to be open, that learning and education should not be structured. It should be led by the people who are there and are consuming the information. They should shape it. There is a section in the conversation which is called the fringe of learning. In the fringe of learning, which is called constructivism, it's a subject in how learning works. In that section, we talk about the fact that one of the highest of learnings is when the learners control it, construct it, shape it, lead it. They are not only the learners, they are the ones who completely, they do
Creators.
all of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not only engaged in best, they shape it. They do everything.
Mm-hmm.
There is no leaders, there's no teacher. They own it. We covered the sensory system. Let me, if I may, let me add a couple of more things so that
Before we
not
move to
only.
the next things, just one question here,
Sure.
Michael. You mentioned that there's an elevated process of learning, and I did touch on the subject of tapping from the cloud, and you were linking it more to extraordinary processes that go on in our mind on the basis of neuroscience, but they're still processes in the brain.
Yes.
And yet there are studies, and also the Nobel Prize Award was given in 2023 to three people talking about quantum entanglement. And there are studies done on telepathy and on conveying of information that was done in what are these Faraday cages. So this means it's not it's a phenomenon that is not based on physical wave transmission, right? In your experience with learning, have you observed this, and are you accounting for this fact of telepathy and of sourcing of information from, let's say, higher sources or the cloud, or however you define it?
So again, absolutely, I concur with it. I've not only observed it, I've used it.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable using the word demonstrated because I don't do it for the purpose of demonstrated, but sitting in meetings, I've asked for the permission of people who attend in a meeting to retrieve their thoughts and their stored information in front of the others. I didn't do it for the purpose of demonstrating anything. I just knew it's there, and I thought it would contribute to the conversation. And if they said yes, and they did always say yes, I pulled it out right in front of the other people.
Yeah.
And it works. It requires awareness. It requires focusing, that people are focused inside the meeting. It is that elevated cognitive ability of people. Um, uh, I'm not surprised. I think it also requires one more thing, and that is that the people who would be engaged in it would use the different domains of our cognitive ability and would not be just as the authors of the Nobel and the winners of the Nobel also note that they are not siloed, but they are multifaceted. Once you use multifaceted capacities, not only in learning, but in the way you function, then you would see more of that happening. And we see it in BEST, we see it in how learning works, meaning information, the intake is not in one domain, the storage is not in one domain, and the retrieval is also not from one domain. The more this is the case, the more phenomena such as what you call telepathy would happen. Is it telepathy? Is it the right terminology? I don't know. I think I call it in the group of collaboration and teamwork. I call it connection. But I think it's a matter of what words we use to describe it. I think it's in our each of us ability to go to the higher level of our cognitive ability. And if we bother to get there, we will discover some amazing things that we can do. The question is whether we bother to get there. Um, I've enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed seeing other people who can do it. So it's amazing. Why not get there?
Yeah, I think that tapping into these abilities is anyhow the way forward for us. It's people are unlocking these abilities. It's just that currently they're linking them to mysticism and to fields that have not been studied enough and have not been,
Yes.
but they exist. And
I think those who
it's how
call
we
it
put them in practice.
I think those who call it mysticism are just those who postpone,
Yes.
who do not want us or others to get there. I've enjoyed using them since I was a little kid, so it never bothered me why they're there. They're there, so it's fun. It's without demoting them. These you feel as a person who was created by a mother, or you brought to the world by a mother, you feel like a kid in a candy store. You discover that there are so many good things in the fact that you were brought to the world. Why not use them? And so humans are really incredible, as I often write in articles. Why not use the amazing thing that so many people have? Everybody has them. So it baffles me why people would not want to discover their gifts, their talents, their creativity, and so on. I'm pushing us.
It's so much easier for a child to that is not unburdened by programming and societal pressure to, that doesn't need to break the walls and open up. They're naturally open to these abilities.
So I'll tell you a funny story, which I often see at best when the participants, middle school and high school students, sometimes discover these abilities. You see how sometimes even gravity backs and they rise from the floor. So this isn't Jesus Christ walking on water. So I'm not describing, although I respect that as well so much, but you see how their self-awareness of what's going on, when they own suddenly these capacity and gravity backs and they rise. And I cry when I watch it. Because they become aware not how gifted they are, but what tremendous capacities are there. And you watch it and you say, God, what's going on? They were given and they are aware of it and they use it with the others. It's a tremendous self-awareness that you're watching happening to such young people, and it's so rewarding to see it. Even just for that, learning to learn is worth the whole process. I believe it.
I'm excited to introduce a groundbreaking service we're offering in collaboration with our partners, GrowNLearn. This service is designed to help you identify bottlenecks and uncover low-hanging fruits for innovation within your organization. GrowNLearn performs a comprehensive assessment through a digital questionnaire that we distribute to your employees. The result is a detailed dashboard that highlights key innovation indicators and areas where improvement is needed. Armed with these insights, we from GrowNLearn will connect you to the ideal consultant, trainer, coach, or speaker from our global network of top-tier experts to address any gaps and drive growth. Don't forget to check out the links in the description for special offers from our partners, including a free LinkedIn profile assessment. Thank you for listening to GrowNLearn. We hope that you found our podcast informative, engaging, and inspiring.